Who is the most important manager in Serie A history? The youngest to win a Scudetto, the first foreigner to ever do it, the man who built the best team in Italy, in Europe, in the world. And why don't you know his name? This is the story of Bologna. This is the story of Arpad Weisz. And this is what fascism tried to erase in episode 5 of Fascist Football. If Naples was a political project to win over the forgotten South, Bologna was something else entirely. A model fascist city, loyal, efficient and ambitious, and its football team, the pride of Mussolini himself. So, let's head north to Emilia-Romagna to uncover the story of Il Bologna di Mussolini. In the 1930s, Bologna FC became one of the greatest teams in Europe. But behind the trophies, behind the headlines, is a story of how football became a battleground for ideology, nationalism, and eventually, murderous betrayal. Founded in 1909, Bologna FC rose to prominence in the 1930s, right as Mussolini sought to turn Italian football into a symbol of national strength. While Juventus and Ambrosiana Inter were the regime's glamorous giants, Bologna was its model of order and effectiveness. The city of Bologna was known as La Dotta, the learned one, for its ancient university, and La Grassa, the fat one, for its cuisine. But under the fascists, who backed them to the hilt, it also became La Vincente, the winning one. La Vincente's success was staged in one of fascist Italy's earliest and most striking monuments, the Stadio Littoriale. In 1925, Bologna began building an immense arena modelled on the ancient baths of Caracalla, Mussolini's vision of imperial revival. Built for 40,000 strong, it was hailed as a temple to the new Italian physique, crowned by a statue of a mounted Il Duce. On the 31st of October 1926, Mussolini arrived at the Stadio Littoriale astride a snow-white steed, an image borrowed from Imperial Rome. Beneath the soaring arches, 30,000 Bolognese cheered as he extolled the virtues of athleticism, discipline, and the glory of the state. After his speech, Mussolini rode off in an open-topped torpedo limousine, its lacquered sides painted in fascist black and red. As the motorcade wound through the parched autumn streets, a sudden crack rang out. An errant bullet whizzed through the car's rear window, nicking the Duce's scarf. Panic exploded. Fascist militia surged forward. In the crush, 15-year-old Anteo Zamboni, son of a well-known former anarchist, was trampled and beaten to death. Within hours, the regime had framed young Anteo as the would-be assassin. His family was stripped of their livelihood and sent into internal exile. Newspapers ran lurid headlines of red plots and anarchist kids' treachery. That night, the city's lampposts were draped with black crepe, and fascist squads marched through the streets, bayonets gleaming in the floodlights. The Zamboni affair became a pretext for terror. Within a month, the death penalty, previously abolished in 1888, was restored. All opposition parties and newspapers were banned, and a new secret police was empowered to crush dissent. Decades later, Bologna would name a street and lay a memorial plaque for Anteo. But the boy's real story, his terror, his innocence, remains buried beneath the regime's myth. Today, the stadium stands as Stadio Renato Dall'Ara, its bones still echoing the banners, salutes, and violence of its fascist birth. During the fascist era, Bologna won 6 Serie A titles, 2 Mitropa Cups, and in 1937 beat Chelsea 4-1 in Paris to win the Exposition Universale tournament, an unofficial European championship, an ancestor to the Champions League. The victory of the Rossoblu marked the apogee of Bologna Football Club and was one of the highlights of Italian football in the 1930s. It was propaganda gold. The fascist press celebrated Bologna as lo squadrone che tremare il mondo fa, the team that made the world tremble. This victory for Bolognese sport constitutes a crystalline victory for fascist Italy. Bologna won a hard battle, using the virile style and irresistible attacks that characterize fascist athletes. They present themselves before the whole world in the image of their nation, young, valiant, and combative everywhere, at every moment and in every action. Wherever an Italian citizen has to fight, whether in the heart of the fatherland or beyond its frontiers, he will always assure the triumph of the Italian flag. While the rest of the world still clung to the Olympic ideal, sport as peace and unity, fascist Italy played a different game. Bologna didn't win in the name of fair play, they won for glory, for domination, for Mussolini, who had found his footballing army. Tactical sophistication, physical preparation, and loyalty defined Bologna's style. Everything the fascists idealized in the modern Italian man. And some of the club's greatest architects were Jewish. At the heart of Bologna's success stood Arpad Weisz, a Hungarian Jewish coach, tactical innovator, and visionary. He brought with him modern training methods and a deep understanding of the game. Under his leadership, Bologna won 2 Scudetti and achieved the crowning footballing feat of the fascist era when they beat Chelsea 4-1 to win the previously mentioned Exposition Universale tournament. Weisz was not alone. Several Jewish administrators and intellectuals were part of the Bologna setup. Their contributions were quietly foundational. But in fascist Italy, identity was becoming dangerous. In 1938, Mussolini's regime introduced the Italian racial laws, stripping Jews of their rights, livelihoods, and dignity. Jewish coaches, officials, and players were banned from all sporting institutions. Arpad Weisz, despite his success, was forced to flee with his family. They went first to France, then to the Netherlands, where Weisz briefly coached again, but safety was only temporary. In 1942, Weisz was arrested by the Nazis. He was deported to Auschwitz, where he was murdered in 1944. His wife and children were killed alongside him. For decades, Weisz was forgotten, his role in Bologna's greatness scrubbed from official history. It wasn't until the 21st century that his story fully resurfaced into the public consciousness, pieced together by researchers, fans, and survivors. Today, his name is honoured. A stand is named after him at the Renato Dall'Ara. But for nearly 70 years, one of Italian football's greatest minds was erased. Bologna's history is one of contradictions. A club celebrated as a symbol of fascist discipline, yet built on the genius of men the regime would persecute. Its trophies were paraded through the streets with fascist salutes, but its greatest architect died in Auschwitz. The story of Bologna is not just a tale of footballing success, it's a mirror of Italy itself during the fascist years. Proud, ambitious, brutal, and ultimately haunted by the cost of its ideology. The fascists tried to use Bologna to show the power of the state, but history has revealed something more powerful: the people they tried to erase. And in the city of Ladotta, it is memory, not propaganda, that endures. By the end of the 1930s, Italian football was no longer just a game. It was a machine, a spectacle, a weapon. Clubs like Fiorentina and Roma were born or remade in the image of the regime, symbols of a new, unified Italy. Napoli was transformed from an unwanted outpost into a test site for national integration, and Bologna became the regime's crown jewel, a disciplined, victorious model of Italian strength. All four were shaped, sometimes willingly, sometimes not, by the fascist vision of modernity, ordered, centralized, and proudly Roman in its ambition. But the fascist project came at a cost. It flattened identities. It used sport to erase difference, to impose control. It celebrated players it would later expel, and it built stadiums to glorify a state that no longer exists, and it left behind a trail of contradictions. Fiorentina and Roma, clubs born of mergers and decrees, now stand proudly as icons of local passion. Napoli, once neglected, now represents resistance, flair, and southern pride. Bologna, whose golden era was built by men like Arpad Weisz, carries a legacy of both brilliance and betrayal. Fascism tried to use football to shape the Italian soul, but football has a longer memory than regimes. It remembers who built the clubs, who filled the stands, and tragically, who never came back. Today, those clubs belong not to Mussolini's Italy, but to the people, to the Tifosi in Naples, in Rome, in Florence, and in Bologna, who kept the songs going long after the salutes had stopped. This is the legacy of fascist football. Not the monuments, not the medals, but the struggle over who gets to tell the story and who refuses to be forgotten. We are Know Your Ball, and this has been episode 4 of Fascist Football.